guys, it's Vida and today I've come up with a really special video. Earlier I showed you how to measure things. I have showed you all the measurements and then the liquid measurements, the cup measurements, weighing scales and all those kind of videos. So I'll leave a link in the description down below to that video if you want to see it. And after that video, so many people have requested to show all the tools and everything I use for baking cakes. So here are all the things. And today I'll be showing you how to use all of these. And so first step is making the cake batter. For making the cake batter, you need all your ingredients like flour, cocoa powder, baking soda, salt, then eggs, butter, buttermilk, milk and all these ingredients. So when you take all these ingredients, you need to make sure that each of these ingredients are in room temperature. You don't want a really cold one or a really hot one. You just need it in room temperature so that your cake is going to be perfectly soft and delicious. Then the next thing is that you need to take baking powder and baking soda that is not expired. The same thing with yeast. You should not use expired or near to expiry date yeast or baking powder or baking soda, because if you use them, it's not going to be that useful. It's not going to bake perfectly. It's just going to be a big flop. So you need to use really fresh baking powder, baking soda and yeast for cakes, breads, cookies and any sort of baking. So next is you need to measure all of your ingredients really well. Cake is a really fickle thing, so if the measurement goes a little bit here and there, the full cake is going to be a big flop. So you need all the measurements in perfect amount. For that, you can either use cups or you can use milliliters or you can use weighing scale. So the best thing to use is weighing scale because you get exact measurements in weighing scale. That is going to be easier to use. And also you can use cup. These are just 1 cup, 2 cup, 3 cup kind of stuff. And then for measuring liquid things like butter, melted butter or just buttermilk or milk, you can use milliliters. These are just 100 milliliters, then 1 milliliter and all those kind of liters. So the most appropriate thing to use is weighing scale. Next up is spatulas. So spatula is something that's very useful, especially you're making cake batter. You need a spatula. If you're making frosting, you need a spatula to scrape down the bowl. You need a spatula for everything. You need a spatula. So always make sure you have spatulas with you. Next thing that you need is food colors. So there are 3 different types of food colors. They are liquid, gel, and you also have water food color. So water food color is really liquidy. You just don't want to use that for frostings because frosting is also really fickle. A little bit of water will make the frosting consistency go really bad. So do not use water food color for frosting. The best thing to use for cake and frosting is gel food color, because a little bit of gel food color will make a lot of color, and the best brand I know is Wilton. So you can always go ahead and buy Wilton food color. Not only food color, all other things also Wilton is the best thing to do. Piping tips, piping bags, then turntables, everything Wilton is really good. So next step is baking the cake batter. So for that you need baking trays, baking pans. So basically there are different types of baking pans in different shapes. So I have square pan, then tea-loaf pan and some round pans. These are very common. So round pans, there are different sizes like 6 inch, this one is 6 inch, this is 4 inch, and then there are different sizes of pans. So you can go ahead and choose the size you like. And then there is tea-loaf pan. These pans are mainly used for making snack cakes like dates cake and cakes without frosting basically. So snack cakes you can make it in this, dates cake, fruit cakes are already good to bake in this. And then this you can use for pastries. So if you are not planning to frost it, so if you're not planning to frost the full cake and just the top, you can use this pan. So before you pour the cake batter into the baking pan, you need to dust it with all-purpose flour or line it with parchment paper. So before lining it with parchment paper, you need to brush it with oil or butter, and then you can line it with parchment paper. And the same with dusting it with flour. You have to brush it with butter or oil, and then you can dust the full pan with flour. So either way it's not going to stick. If you have parchment paper, that's the best thing to do. Next, you have to keep this into the oven for baking, and most of the times the recipe calls for preheating the oven. So you need to preheat it for around 5 to 10 minutes in the given degree Celsius or Fahrenheit, and then you can keep it inside. After that, you need to check whether the cake is baked. So what you can do is take a skewer, toothpick, or anything you want and just poke it into the cake. So if the skewer comes out clean, perfectly clean, you know that the cake is baked totally. And for recipes like brownie, you will have a little bit of fudginess in the skewer because brownies are basically fudgy. For other cakes, you need the skewer to come out clean, then you know it's totally baked. Once you know the cake is baked, take it out of the oven, let it cool completely. Only then you can take it out of the pan because cakes are really soft. So if you take it out of the pan right when it is hot, it's going to be really soft and it will break apart. So you need to let it completely cool in the pan itself and then you can take it out of the pan. And for frosting also, do not frost your cake all the way when it is hot because the frosting is going to melt totally and it's going to be a total mess. So you need to completely cool the cake before frosting and also before taking it out of the pan. So the cake should be completely cool. Next up is making the frosting. So for making the frosting, there are different kinds of frosting you like. So there'll be whipped cream frosting, buttercreams. So there are 3 types of buttercreams. That is Italian meringue buttercream, Swiss meringue buttercream, and then just the normal American buttercream. So for American buttercream, all you need is icing sugar and butter, softened butter. So sometimes people also add vanilla extract, so that's up to you. And for Swiss meringue and Italian meringue, you use eggs. And for it, we use candy thermometers because the sugar syrup needs to be a perfect temperature. So if you don't have a candy thermometer, so how you can measure it is just use this, keep it onto the side of the pan and let the sugar syrup come to the perfect temperature and the mercury will go up to the perfect temperature and then you know it's going to be done. So if you don't have a candy thermometer, what you can do is take 2 to 3 drops of the sugar syrup, keep it in between your fingers and just try pressing it up and down. So you'll see it's going to be sticky and also you need to see strings. So then you know the sugar syrup is in the perfect temperature. If you don't want to do that, you can go ahead and buy a candy thermometer. And then there is whipped cream. So for whipped cream, you can use a stand mixer or a hand beater. It's always better to use either of these two than using a whisk because whisk, it takes a lot of time to beat it up. For whipping cream, you just need whipping cream and icing sugar. So you can just whip it up together, use a hand beater or a stand mixer. With a whisk, it's going to take a little bit more time, but that's fine. You can even use a whisk. So after making the frosting, you can go ahead and frost this full cake. So the rest of the tools are for frosting the cake. So let's see what we need for frosting the cake. So I have dowels. These are wooden dowels and these are just cake pop sticks that I use as dowels. So you can either use these for making cake pops or you can use it as support for the cake. So what dowels do is they give support for the cake, especially if you're making 2-tiered cakes or 3-tiered cakes. You can use dowels so that they stay in place and they don't make a big mess or else the cake will collapse. So you need to give them support and you can do that by using dowels or else the cake will collapse. Next, what you need for frosting the cake is an offset spatula. So this is something that I use all the time for frosting cakes. It's really easy and it's really good. So if you don't have an offset spatula, you can use a normal spatula and frost the cake. But it's always better to use an offset spatula. It's really easy to use and good. And this is a bench scraper. So I use this for frosting the cake. I keep this on the cake like this and then twist the turntable. So the sides of the cake is gonna get really smooth. And that's really easy to do. So this is a really easy thing to use and also it makes the cake really smooth. Next here I have piping tips. So I have bought totally a big piping tip set. This is a Wilton 58 tip set. So it's always better to use Wilton things just as I said because they're really branded. Rather than buying different packs of piping tips, you can just go ahead and buy this one big set which is all the piping tips and necessary things you need. So here I have 2 flower nails. What you do is just cut a piece of pattern paper, keep it here and then use this petal tip and then you can pipe flowers in it. So that is the use of these flower nails. Then here I have some big piping tips. These are really big piping tips, so different sizes are there. Then these are couplers. I'll show you how to use these couplers just in a bit. These are really useful. You don't have to change the piping bag every time. These are really useful. I'll show you how to use them in a bit. And then these are the rest of the tips. So these are the round tips. So all of the Wilton tips have numbers in it. So when other people say to use this tip, you can refer to it and use it. So they have numbers. And then these are the round tips. This is the grass tip. So if you're making a teddy bear cake or a field cake, so you can use them as grass, also as hair for the teddy bear. And these are some open star tips. These give a really nice effect on the cake. So you can pipe dollops with them. And then these are petal tips. There are different sizes of petals. And then these are leaves. These are used for piping leaves. And then there are so many other tips. These are some closed star tips. There are so many different types of tips. So next we need a piping bag. I'll show you how to use a coupler right now. So here I have the piping bag. I'm going to take a scissors and cut the end of the piping bag just a little bit. Then separate this tip part and only put the half of the coupler in. You should leave the round tip part for later. Then put that in, and if you want to cut it, you can cut more. I'm just going to cut a little bit more. Push the coupler to the end. Then you keep the tip on top of the coupler and just tighten that thing. So the tip will stay there and you don't have to keep changing a piping bag every time. If you want to put another piping tip, then you can just remove that tip part and put it in again and fasten it back. So that's easy. So it's always better to use a Wilton piping bag. There are also other piping bags like this. These are disposable, these are not. So there is a coupler, pre-made coupler in it. So you can use these. Then I have cookie cutters. These are not actually necessary for baking cakes, but you can use these circles for making chess cakes and all. Then here I have cake boards. These cake boards, you can keep the cake board underneath and then keep the cake on top of it and frost it. So those are useful, and there are different sizes of cake boards, so you can use the size you want. So now this is a 6-inch cake board, and here I have turntable. So turntables are really useful. What you do is just take the spatula, keep the cake, and you can just frost it. That's easy. If you don't have a cake board, it's fine. You can frost it even without a cake board, but it's always easier to use a cake board. And this is just a 10 Real cake board. This one is Wilton's and it's really costly. So if you want, you can go ahead and buy Wilton's, but if you don't, you can just use a normal one. Whatever it is, it's just the same use. So that's it for this video. That's really simple, and you can also make cakes without using any of these. I have made a cake earlier. I have made so many cakes earlier without using oven or even using turntables, without frosting, and also even without cake pans. So you can go ahead and check those videos if you want. You necessarily don't need any of these. So that was it for today's video. I hope everybody found this video useful. And if you did, please don't forget to like, share, subscribe and comment. Thanks for watching. Love Cooking.